Welcome to Tales on the Towpath, the podcast where every mile tells a story.
We're two runners who spend a lot of time out here on the C&O Canal towpath, talking about training, racing, and everything that happens between the miles.
From early morning runs to the stories that keep us moving.
This is where endurance meets inspiration, one step, one tail at a time.
So lace up and join us on the path, because every trail has a story, and this one's ours.
Welcome back. I'm Adam Lowe.
And I'm Chris Earl.
And I'm returning special guest, Katie Lowe. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Absolutely, Katie. We're glad to have you here, as always. So this week, we're going to talk about winter running and all things associated with that. But before we get into that for this episode, Katie, I understand you had an interesting 5K this weekend. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I definitely had a first this weekend. We went and ran the South Berkeley Christmas 5K. We have not done that in past years, but it's definitely a big race around this area. A lot of our friends do it. It's part of the winter series. And there were actually over 1,200 finishers in the race this year, and I believe they announced it's the biggest 5K in the state of West Virginia as of having that many finishers this year. So that was pretty awesome, and it was really cool to be with all those people. But I had signed up the day before, had not planned on running this, but thinking, oh, this could probably be a pretty good 5K to end my racing season for 2025. I've heard it's flat, it's a good course. So we went ahead and signed up, and the day of the race, I had on it was supposed to be 40 degrees, and it was. So I just wore shorts, tall socks. I wore a tank top, but I wore a festive Christmas long sleeve shirt over top of it. And when I went out for a warm up about half hour in advance, after having already put on my bib, put on my racing shoes, went out for the warm up, the temperature was actually pretty nice. It felt really good, and I told Adam, "I'm gonna be brave. I don't normally do this, but I'm gonna run in a tank top in 40 degrees." I went ahead and put on my arm sleeves because I knew I could peel those off if I got hot, but they should keep my arms warm enough and not that, stinging chill of 40 degrees that you would normally think of. So I went out and I took my bib off my long sleeve shirt and I put on my arm sleeves and went to line up with these 1,200 other runners. And I went towards the front and I'm standing there talking to people, kind of stretching. They're making announcements. And then they say, well, ladies and gentlemen, there's about 1.5 minutes until the start of the race. And I don't know what I was thinking of, but something dawned on me. And I looked down at my torso and it was just my shirt. There was no bib. I did not have my bib on. I had taken it off of my long sleeve shirt, but not pinned it to my tank top. So I just instinctively put my hands on my belly like as if that was like I was feeling around for it, but surely enough, it was not there. So all of a sudden in my mind, it was like, what do I do? Do I run without the bib? And I'm like, I'm not running this race without getting an official time. So take off from the start line and sprint back inside to the gymnasium where the expo had been because we had had a booth set up in there. And that's where all our stuff was. And sure enough, my bib was sitting right on our booth table at the expo. I grabbed the bib. In the meantime, I hear the gun go off. I sprint back outside. Meanwhile, trying to pin, I got 3 out of the 4 pins on into my shirt and had my bib secured, I suppose. By the time I get back out there, probably 3/4 of the people had started, and I had really secretly been hoping to run a fast close to PR time. I knew I probably wouldn't PR, but I had higher hopes for the day and than starting way back in the field. But then, the rest of that race was just playing catch up. And whenever you have a chip time, it doesn't really matter where you start. You can still run your race and run your solid time. But in my mind, that first mile, the whole time, I just spent trying to catch up to where I thought I should have been in the first place. I looked down and my pace is at like a 6:20, and I knew that if I had kept that up for too long, there was gonna be walking at the end of that 5K. So, I ended up dialing it back, I did not have the race I wanted to run, but at least I got an official time, I suppose. That's definitely a mistake I hope not to make again in the near future.
Just so glad that you've realized it before you started running. Like, I can't imagine getting it to like a half a mile into the race and being like, wait, I don't have my bib. I don't know what I'd do at that point. I'd probably keep going, but like, I'd be so frustrated.
Yeah, if we had already started, I would have had to just keep going, right? And just been like, "Okay, I have to pay the consequences for the actions." I definitely have been known in the past to leave my bib at home. There was one of our races that Adam assigned me a special number because I like to pick my numbers, and my number was 13. And I got halfway up to our race. I was driving with one of our kids. I got halfway there and was like, "No, I don't have my bib." So I had to turn back around, go home. Luckily, it was like a hometown, only 20 minutes away type of race, but I was later than expected to that race. So now whenever I run our own races, Adam usually doesn't let me pick up my bib until the morning of.
So what was your time overall, and how did you end up placing in your age group?
Oh, I my time overall, this was a true 5K. The last couple 5Ks I've run were slightly short. It was just over 23 minutes. I forget the seconds, 23:06 or something like that. That was good enough to get me 2nd place in my age group.
Right, not bad.
Yeah, the turnout was good. The result, I guess, was good. I just had hoped to break that 23-minute mark. I think I could have too if it hadn't been for the whole bib debacle. So now not only do we have to make sure I have my bib on race day, I also have to have somebody check and make sure I put it on my shirt.
Oh, that's great. So, Adam, I think you also ran the race, right? Why don't you tell us about your experience on the day?
Yes, I did. So, like Katie mentioned, we had the opportunity of having a booth at the expo. So we were there the night before to set up, and Katie and Ryan signed up to run the 5K. And I, said I wasn't going to run. No real desire to go out there and run a 5K. I figured I was done racing for the year. And as we went to leave, Amy, the race director, one of the race directors, came up and asked me if I would be interested in being the pacer or one of the pacers. And that sounded like a lot of fun. So I told her she didn't know which pace group she wanted me to lead yet. So I just told her, just text me when you figure it out. Anywhere from, I think I said 18 or 19 minutes all the way up to an hour, I'd be willing to pace. So I kind of left the ball in her court. Wherever she needed me, I would pace. And she texted me later that night and said she wanted me to pace the 25-minute group. So I agreed and said, okay, I had told her I would just put it in my computer in my brain, and that's what I would run that morning. So, or that afternoon. So I figured I would just do 8 minutes, 8 minutes, 8 minutes. That's 24. And then the last point, 1, 2, I would get done in 1 minute, and then 25 minutes in the books. Pretty easy pace job there. I had heard from a couple people when I went to the start line that the course was short. So they told me that it was like 3.03 in the past. So I was thinking, okay, I'll pay attention to that. I'll kind of jog some of the corners wide during the race so I can, get a little bit more and not have to worry too much about the pacing. So I kind of had some tricks up my sleeve to kind of stay on target there. First mile I ran in 7 minutes. Yeah, 7:59:59 is what it came up on my watch. So I knew I was right on pace. Second mile was 7:59:91. So again, right on pace. The course was flat, so there wasn't like I had to worry about going up or down hills. And then mile 3 was 7:59:26, I think. So again, right on pace, right where I needed to be. And I get over the last little bump, and now you can see the finish line. And as I can see the finish line, I'm looking and I notice that it is a little further away than point one. it just looks far away. So I start to pick it up just a little bit. And I'm looking down at the watch as the seconds are ticking by. And I'm at, I think, 25:40. And I realized that if I'm going to be at 25 minutes, I have to sprint. So I sprinted probably the last 100, meters, and I came in right at 25:03 was my time for pacing. So I paced it pretty well. And overall, it was a great experience. I ran with probably 15, 16 different people that kind of used me as a pacer throughout. I had one lady who I ran with from mile 1.5 all the way to the end. So we ran about a mile and a half together. I was just talking with her, encouraging her, telling her, hey, like, we're a mile away. That's only 8 minutes of running. We got this. And I had other people that would run and then walk and then run, and just they were using me as a guide. They wanted to stay in front of me. So it was really cool to be able to help people and kind of just, be used as a pacer. And I was really worried that I would get caught up in the race and go out way too fast and then ruin other people's race, but I was able to stay reeled in and stay on the target pace there at 8 minutes a mile. And really, really looking forward to maybe doing that again soon. It was a lot of fun to just look down at my watch and play that game the entire way. I wanted to give a shout out to Mark and Amy for putting together a huge race. Like Katie said, there were over 1,200 people that ran the 5K. And as far as I could tell, everything went seamlessly. There was a parade after it. So it was really interesting. Like, people come out to watch the parade and they're already sitting in their seats as you run by for this 5K. So it almost had like a big city marathon feel. There were bands out there, marching bands, DJs with music. There were people out there at their houses. With one family had beer at a beer table. So of course I had to stop and get a beer. Maybe that's where those 3 seconds went. If I didn't stop, I would have ran 25 even, I guess. But yeah, it was a great 5K. I'll definitely go back next year and probably race it and see how it goes.
So did you treat the beer like it was a beer mile chug? Did you get it down in 6 or 7 seconds?
Oh yeah, the cups were about 75% full, so I probably got about 5, 6 ounces of beer real quick, and then right back on the course. So yeah, that beer might have cost me those 3 seconds.
So I really applaud you for going out and doing that pacing work. I know when I ran Marine Corps back in October, I got right on the hip of the pace group leader that for the time I wanted to run, and it really helped me to get through that. So I'm sure the people that ran with you were extremely grateful for you being willing to go out there and set the pace. And of course, you nailed it, just like always, with whatever pace you have in your mind. You just dial it in and away you go.
Yeah, it was good to be able to lock that in. And I've never the pacer before, so like an actual pacer. So it was probably a good experience for me to do this at a 5K and not at a marathon. But yeah, I really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, maybe you've got a marathon pacer in your future.
All right, so that was Katie and I's race experience from the last weekend. And I wanted to jump in before we talked about the cold weather gear, just kind of give everyone an update about where I am and where Chris is for the end of our year goal here. One of my goals was to get to 4,000 miles. So this week, and well, last week too, just trying to put in a ton of miles back to my normal 80 miles a week. And as of recording this podcast, I'm 275.1 miles away from my goal. So that's kind of my last goal of the year that I can achieve. So we're just going with that with 21 days to go and enjoying the cold weather that West Virginia is giving us and trying to get these miles in and miles done. So that's kind of like how my last week of training's been going. Chris, how about you? How's your last week of training been going?
So, yeah, yesterday I finally reached my goal for the year. I hit 3,000 miles. So I'm super happy about that. That is by far the highest I've ever had. Last year was my previous high, and I was at 2,800 miles. So I'm 200 miles above that, and I've still got 3 weeks to go. So as of today, I'm at 3,010, looking to, go well past 3,100 for the year. I also set an elevation goal for myself this year of 165,000 feet. I'm currently just shy of 161,000. So I've got about 4,000 feet to go, which, when I did the math right before we got on here, means I need to get just right around 200 feet per day. So as long as I don't spend too much time on the canal in the next 3 weeks, I should be pretty good to meet that goal as well. So really excited about that, but looking to finish the year strong.
Sounds good.
Well, now that we've gotten through what we've been doing this last week and the race that you all participated in, why don't we jump into what we really want to talk about for this week's episode? And that's how we're going to deal with the colder weather and temperatures and lack of daylight that comes with winter running. I thought maybe the first thing we could talk about is just, what do you do from a running gear perspective now that the temperatures are getting colder? In the summertime, most of us are in tank tops and shorts and, trying to, wear as little as possible out there on the canal. But it's a lot different now. So, Adam, you want to start? And then maybe Katie, you can talk about what you wear. And then I'll talk about how I deal with the cold from an outfit perspective.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one, guys. I think everyone's going to get to finally see, if you didn't already know, how different of runners Katie and I are, for sure. So when we talk about this winter running or running in cold weather, I am still 99.9% of the time in shorts. If the temperature is below 10, I'll think about wearing pants. And if it is below 0, I'll put some tights on. But other than that, I am in shorts. And when it is cold out, about 30, 35, maybe even 40 sometimes. Below that, I'll put gloves on. We can talk about my gloves later, Katie, if you want. But uh, I I have some brand new gloves that are perfect and they keep my hands really warm. And then I have some gloves that she calls like my Super Mario gloves or something.
Yeah, have you if you guys can imagine the Super Mario Brothers costumes at Halloween that come with those big white gloves that have the thick, like, rounded fingers on them, that's what Adam's one pair of gloves looks like, except they're, like, tiny. They look like they're kid size, but they have these, like, rounded finger pieces, and I'm like, "Adam, you please just buy a new pair of gloves. You don't have to wear those." But he actually lent them to me at one race and said I could use them as throwaways, but I didn't end up needing them, so we got to keep those.
So yeah, but they work, right? And they keep my hands warm. But the problem is sometimes when you have like three pairs of the same gloves, you just grab like two left-handed gloves because it's like dark in the morning. So I do that more often than I should. Um, but as far as t-shirts go, if you ran the Marine Corps Marathon in 2012 through 2016, I think you would appreciate this. They used to give us these mock turtleneck things, and did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. They are my warmest running shirt. And one time I went to the turkey trot and they were giving away brown, whatever year was brown, this nasty brown color. And I think I grabbed like 6 of those. So that is my winter running shirt. If you ever see me running in the winter, I'm probably wearing a brown Marine Corps shirt. I love those things, and shorts, and then maybe some gloves that are probably 2 left-handed gloves and a beanie, and that's my winter gear right there summed up in those 4 things. So, uh, pretty simple. They keep me warm enough. Like I said, if it gets below 0, I'll put a buff around my face or put some pants on, but other than that, I'm pretty warm-blooded, so I like to keep it pretty simple. How about you, Katie?
Yeah, we could not be more different whenever it comes to this. Just in general around the house, Adam runs hot. He's always hot, and I'm always freezing cold. So I mean, sometimes it works to have that balance. But as far as winter running goes, a lot of times I'm on the treadmill because of the cold. I just do not enjoy it. I don't know. I've tried to pinpoint what it is that I hate, but I hate the feeling of being cold. And I don't know if it's because it stings. I just don't like it. I've gotten a little more used to it though with training for JFK the last few years. So I've had to go out in the cold, and then I did actually brave the cold months and trained for a spring marathon a couple years ago. So that kind of forced my hand to go outside. But if Adam and I were going to run together on a cold day, he would have what he just described on, and sometimes just a t-shirt, and I would have layers on. I can think of our first JFK that we've talked about several times now on this podcast, but it was a cold day, and the pictures mostly show Adam in a short sleeve t-shirt and shorts, and I have on a hooded jacket and long leggings, like, completely covered, but what you don't see is I have at least 3 to 4 layers on the top. I had on probably a tank top, a arm sleeves, a long sleeve shirt, and that jacket, that zip-up hoodie jacket, and then on the bottom, I had shorts on underneath my full-length leggings and tall socks. That was and I was comfortable, so that was good for me, but it was completely opposite of what you see Adam in that day, what he was comfortable in. I pretty much always start out with gloves. I will say my hands do warm up fairly quickly in the cold weather, so that is one good thing, but I always start with gloves. I always wear a hat with either an ear warmer or a buff over my ears. The face cover is pretty much only needed whenever we're getting down into the 20s or below. And yeah, I dress the same as I just described for JFK, where I do the arm sleeves because that's an easy layer to kind of pull off from underneath if I am overdressed, which tends to happen because I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to the idea of being cold. Probably worse about the idea of being cold than it is in actual application out there. But I do have one really I was gonna say nice, but I don't even know how nice it is. It's Under Armour, but I've had it for years. It's thick, but not bulky, and I wear that, and it does keep my upper body really warm. It's like a quarter zip, and it has the thumb holes in the hands, so it's like, the sleeves are a little longer, so I can kinda pull them down over my kinda half over my hands along with the gloves.
Yeah, so we are completely different, that's for sure. How about you, Chris? What's your go-to winter gear?
Yeah, I'm probably a hybrid somewhere between you two. And by that, I mean, I almost never run on the treadmill. I know I'm sitting here tonight in front of our treadmill, but if I
Yeah.
like, it's got to be really, really cold and wet and nasty outside for me not to go out and run outside. But because of that, that means since I run colder, it's probably similar to Katie, I've got a I've got a pretty good arsenal of layers and I'm a laundry disaster in the wintertime.
That's one of the reasons for the treadmills because it saves it putting on all these layers and then the laundry, the time saved and the laundry saved, that's why half the time I just end up on the treadmill.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense because I'm going through almost my entire running wardrobe every week. I'm gonna those of you who haven't maybe met me in person yet, you will if you have met me, you know there's no insulation on top. So uh I'm wearing a hat or a beanie or something all the time because that bald head of mine is like a chimney for letting all the heat out. So I've got to do something to try to keep some of it in. But then on my core, I'm in if the temperature's below 40, I'm going to have a base layer and then I might have a light jacket or I might have a fleece on top depending on whether it's wet or windy. I'm going to make sure I'm trying to keep that core temperature where it needs to be. Gloves are a must once I get below 40. I get real sensitive to the cold in my hands in the wintertime. And so I've got three different types of gloves I wear. I've got my lightweight gloves when it's in the 40 range. I've got my medium weight when it's, down closer to 30. And then if it gets below 30, I'm pulling out the ski gloves because I hate cold hands. And then, yeah, on my legs, I'm going to almost always have a long pant, a running pant on. And if I don't, if I'm in shorts, I've probably got the compression socks pulled up all the way to my knees. So I'm very different from Adam. I remember not this year, but last year, he and I and Luke had a competition in the summertime where every morning we were running shirtless, and we wanted to see how long we could go and who was going to be the first one to put on a shirt when the temperature started to drop as we got into fall. And it wasn't even close. I gave up like early September, and I think Adam and Luke went probably into October or November before they finally conceded and needed a shirt. But I really don't like being cold. As much as I don't run well when it's super hot, I don't like being cold in the wintertime. So I'm real sensitive to making sure I'm paying attention to what the wind is for the day. And definitely, if there's any chance of precipitation, I'm putting on that waterproof layer to keep my core temperature where it needs to be.
Oh, you're so right, like, when you mentioned the wind especially, that can make such a big difference. It could be a 40-degree day and sunny and feel quite nice versus a 40-degree, overcast and windy day, and it feels like it might as well be 20, 25.
Yeah, 34 degrees, light rain, and wind is like my downfall. I'd rather run at 15 degrees and no wind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. Like, there's different like stages of being cold, right? But like, cold is cold. So once you get out there and you're moving, like I just can't wear all those layers because like I sweat so much and like I'm wet and then I'm cold. So if I just wear that one shirt, sometimes like when Chris and I runs in the morning, we'll do six, and then when we get back, I'll actually change into a second long sleeve brown shirt that I have. So I have a dry shirt for when I start the next 5 or 6 miles that I'm going to do. And then, that instantly warms me up. But I'm definitely a warmer runner than you guys. That's for sure.
I think before my first JFK, whenever we did it, I was more afraid of being out there and being cold the entire day, like a miserable cold. I knew it was gonna be a long day, so I was more nervous about that than I was about finishing the race. I kinda knew I could finish. I was fairly confident, at least. I just didn't wanna be cold and miserable.
Yeah, one other trick that I like to use in the wintertime, if it's real cold and maybe a little damp, is switching from, a cotton or a cotton blend sock to a merino wool, something that's going to shed the water and dry out a little bit quicker, just to keep your feet warm. Because again, like cold feet on a run is pretty miserable.
Agreed.
All right, I think we've pretty much covered, how we all deal with the cold, but another aspect of winter running is there's just a lot less daylight during the day, and most of that daylight unfortunately ends up being while we're all at work. And so that means a lot more running in the dark. Adam, why don't you talk about any strategies you have for how you handle with running in the dark, what equipment you use, or how your routes get modified, and then we'll go around the horn again.
Sure. So I can't tell you the last time I ran in the dark after work. I'm trying to think of the last time I went running like in the evening in the dark, and it's probably been a while unless it was like in a race or something. But the morning's a different story. So in the morning, a lot of times Chris and I will meet up at the towpath and go run at 5 a.m. or sometimes I'll go run at 6 a.m. and it's often dark there. But as far as what I use when we go run, then it's often just a headlamp. And I say often because sometimes I forget mine and it's not charged, and then I'm using Chris's lamp. So you guys are all probably all going to wonder how I've made it so far in life. So sometimes I get there and Chris isn't coming, and I'm thinking I'm going to have to use my phone to run the flashlight, but magically my headlamp has enough charge to get me through. I have a lighted vest that I don't wear ever. I don't really need to be too visible when I'm on the towpath. And if I go run in the neighborhood at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., I usually just have my headlamp or I have Katie with me. So she's lit up like a Christmas tree, so I don't need to wear anything. Everybody can see her coming. So I probably should wear a vest for safety reasons when I'm running in the neighborhood, but yeah, anything else up top except for my green, gray, or brown shirt, I don't like. So I just have the headlamp. I'm pretty simple. I mean, I don't like you asked about adjusting routes. It's, when you're on the towpath all the time, it's just pretty straightforward. And like I said, I usually don't run in the neighborhood in the dark in the morning just for that reason, because I don't want to deal with cars. So to avoid it, I go to the towpath and it's on my way to work. So it just makes it a lot more easier and a lot more safer for then. And luckily, being a guy, I don't fear too much for my safety out there on the towpath in the dark. I'll let Katie touch on that. I feel bad that women have to go through that, but I usually don't worry about it. Knock on wood, so I don't get attacked tomorrow on my run. But we'll let Katie go ahead and talk about how she adjusts for running in the dark.
I was gonna say, you'd wanna just talk about all my points too while you're at
Okay, now it's Chris's turn. Let's go to Chris.
it? Yeah, we've mentioned Katie's lit up like a Christmas tree. She has to worry about being attacked. In seriousness though, I have 2 light vests because the one I had before was battery operate like actually took batteries instead of rechargeable. So I think it was last year, maybe the year before, I did get the rechargeable Nox gear vest, and along with that, the chest lamp so that I don't have to wear the headlamp. I actually quite enjoy that chest lamp because it stays facing forward. I have a really bad habit when I'm running with people that all of a sudden I'll just like the person will say something to me and I'll turn and look at them and then I shine them directly in the face with my headlamp. So having the chest lamp is really nice when I'm running with other people because I don't have to worry about blinding them repeatedly during a run. I do enjoy being lit up because I I just you never know how people are driving these days, whether they're and half the time, the biggest danger where I run, because I'm in the neighborhood, are people backing out of their driveways. So while they're not going at high rates of speed. It's just that I think they get in their cars, people get in their cars and it's automatic and you put it in reverse and normally nobody's coming, right? So that's been my closest call as far as safety with vehicles is concerned. But yeah, I use the lighted vest. I also always have when it gets to these um, winter months in the dark, I have my headlamp handy just in case I'm out on a run in the neighborhood. And this has happened twice already this year where I've lost my light because I didn't have it charged and I didn't know I hadn't paid attention that it needed charge. So luckily one of the times I was out and the light was coming up, so I didn't need the flashlight anymore. But having that headlamp back at home, I usually keep it in the car so I can just stop by, grab it out, and keep going on my run. Now, as far as the safety aspect is in other areas, not maybe the traffic area, I actually do carry what Adam calls my Ninja Turtle weapons. I have a few different options that I can choose from day to day. I have my favorites that I'll carry along with me, but I typically do take mace with me. I have a Go Guarded knife ring that just fits right on my hand, and it's pretty much not going to be removed from me. I also have a taser. I have a pin taser and a regular taser. So any given day, I could have any of these things with me. And I do know when there's been questionable incidents on the towpath, I've been locked and loaded with all 4 things just in case. Typically in the neighborhood, I'll have at least 2 on me. I used to not go out in the dark because I was scared the whole time. And it was more this being scared of the dark than it was the cold. So those things, while not foolproof, I know it cannot hurt, and it makes me feel safer that I have an even better chance of fighting somebody off if something was to, like, really be the worst case scenario. But luckily, again, knock on wood, I'm in my neighborhood. It's a safe neighborhood. I really shouldn't have to worry, but you can never be too careful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Adam said, it's something that I tend to take for granted as well, but I am conscious of it. Like when I'm running on the towpath or on the streets and I come up on another female runner, I try to be very deliberate about keeping space, all those things, because I know that female has to worry about those things, and I want to be as least threatening as I can appear, as I'm out there just putting my miles in too. And, Adam and I have talked about this many a time on the towpath when we're running in the morning. Last summer, there was a day where we got down on the towpath and got, less than a half a mile in. And there was someone who was biking the towpath, was asleep just on the side of the towpath and had a 12 pack of beer sitting there right there beside him. And we, of course, joked about like, hey, maybe we can stop and have a beer at, 5:15 in the morning. But I can imagine that would be a very different experience for you, Katie, or, for any of our female listeners to come upon that and not be the first thing they would think was, hey, I should have a beer with this guy.
Right, and I completely agree, and I tell Adam a lot. We have the same types of conversations, and I'm like, "Well, you're just lucky. You don't have to worry about where you run or when you run or what the daylight's like." But I worry about those things a lot. And, we probably could do a whole entire podcast on this issue because I don't know if I M probably don't know any females, although I don't know all their stories, that haven't had some sketchy comment or car pull up to them or something happen, and it's just I always say I should be able to go out and run in peace without anybody bothering me. So, if I ever don't
Absolutely.
stop for a car that pulls up to me and you're that person just trying to say hi, I apologize if I just say, "Nah, I'm gonna keep running," but I don't take any chances.
Yeah, and as a girl dad, right? Like
Yeah,
that became real sensitive for me as well when Sarah would come home from work and be like, "Oh, I'm going to go out and run." And I'm like, "The heck you are. I'm going with you. I might have already run
right,
my 6 or 8 miles for the day, but guess what? I'm going 11 or 15 or whatever it takes, because I'm not letting her
right.
go out there by herself and putting herself at risk." So,
Recently, my Thursday morning runs have been well, as I was training for a marathon, half marathon, marathon, and then JFK, my Thursday morning runs got fairly long, and that I called that mine and Adam's.
Her computer died.
for our listeners, Katie Lowe's having some technical difficulties. Her laptop computer battery just died, and we'll see if we can get her back with Adam. But maybe Adam, you and I can just go ahead and continue on. I think we've probably covered the running in the dark and the safety issue. One thing I wanted to just touch on briefly with our listeners is something I have to really focus on is that even though it's colder, I still have to pay a lot of attention to my hydration because even though I don't sweat as much while I'm running, it must be the condensation out of my breath, or because I'm not sweating, I don't pay as much attention to drinking while I'm running. But I think it is a good idea for everybody to keep in mind that during the wintertime, you still have to really pay attention to your hydration and making sure you're keeping your fluids up because um, I think we all probably, when we finish our run, one of the ways we check to see how dehydrated we are is, that first time we make a trip to the bathroom. And I know in the wintertime, I suffer from, some darker than normal urine when I wouldn't expect it. So I just throw that out there for everybody to just, make sure you pay attention to your hydration and keep up with that. So I think, Adam, the last thing that we kind of wanted to talk about, we've talked about the cold, we've talked about the dark, but we haven't talked about the precipitation and how that affects footing. I know for me, when it gets icy or when it gets snow on the course, there's a couple of different things I do. One of my absolute favorite runs for the year is the first time we get a fresh snow, and I like to go out and be the first set of tracks on that fresh snow. That's a lot of fun because fresh snow usually isn't as slippery. Um, But, a day later when you've had some refreeze and some packing down, running can get treacherous. Is there anything you do differently in the wintertime when you're dealing with snow and ice?
Yeah, I know that like this January, you and I ran Sawmill Road quite a few times because of the snow and the refreeze. Like you said, that first run on fresh snow is great, but where we park in Shepherdstown, that gets a lot of traffic that first mile in either direction. So after that first day, it gets cold enough to refreeze there, and it's almost a sheet of ice. Last January, it was a sheet of ice. You could not run. I have those, what are they, yak tracks or something? I don't know,
Yep.
whatever yeah, those things that go in the bottom of your shoes, but I generally don't like running with those. They kind of feel weird to me. So if it's a fresh set of snow, I'll go run on it. It's fine. If it's ice or, icy conditions, then reluctantly I'll head to the treadmill and just get miles in safely, just to make sure that, I'm not going to end up slipping and falling or getting hurt, and going from there. Last year we still met at the same place, but we ran on the road, which I don't know how your neighborhood is, but our neighborhood is horrible for like road treatment. So it was actually safer to drive out of my neighborhood to the towpath and run on Sawmill Road than it was to run in my neighborhood on the poorly maintained road. So if it's fresh snow, I'm outside running. If it's ice or refreeze, then I'm hitting the treadmill.
Yeah, I think I'm very similar. While I tend to avoid the treadmill, I do adjust my running time to maybe running closer to lunchtime to take advantage of the warmer temperatures when maybe you get above freezing. And so it's a little less slippery. But same thing, I try very hard not to take any chances with black ice when it comes to refreeze. So I'm running on roads that I know have been treated. I'm sure that doesn't make the local traffic happy that I'm out there competing with them for that fresh pavement. But yeah, you just can't take the risk of hurting yourself, by hitting a patch of ice. And, sometimes it's not even the fall that gets you. It's just that the little bit you slip with each step that moves your muscles a little bit differently. And, best case, you're more sore the next day after you run, but like you can really do some damage. So I would just encourage everybody to be mindful of that and try to find places where the road's been cleared. And, from my perspective, worst case scenario, if you have to get on the treadmill, get on the treadmill and get your miles in, because that's way better than, injuring yourself and then missing a couple of weeks of your training. So I don't know, Katie, are you back? Are you able to add
I'm
any
back.
any thoughts on icy and snowy weather?
Yeah, I don't take any chances at all. I go to the treadmill. Yeah, I go to the treadmill. I don't like the idea of slipping, sliding. I'm really nervous. I've had past knee and ankle injuries, not from running, but from like high school basketball. Actually, both of my those injuries were from high school basketball. But ever since then, I've always been really um, tentative about things that could, like even trail running sometimes makes me nervous. And that's why going down hills on trails I'm so nervous about, is because I don't want my knees or any of my joints to go one way when the rest of my body's trying to go a different way. So I just don't trust it at all. If it's snowy or icy, I am on the treadmill for sure. And I don't mind the treadmill. I actually quite love my treadmill. I am just, I mean, I guess I would rather be outside, but I enjoy the fact that I don't have to whenever it's cold, wet. I mean, I'll go out in the rain, but I don't have to if I don't want to. I can just hit the treadmill. Too easy. I put on old Survivor episodes to
Oh,
get
that's
me through.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm on the treadmill, I definitely have to have the TV on. I've got to have some kind of distraction. It's just for me too monotonous to stare at that digital display and watch it slowly crank up. And 9 times out of 10, if I end up on the treadmill, I'm every quarter mile, cranking up the speed just to get it done a little bit faster.
Yeah, so I think we all have pretty different ideas about how to deal with the winter weather and the elements that it throws at us, but it's pretty cool to have like three different perspectives, I think, right? Like everybody's going to deal with it a little bit different. And you have like my really simple approach, and then you have Katie's really challenging, difficult approach. And then Chris is like our son. He's got best of both worlds. He's right in the middle of it there.
I'm the little bear of the three bears and Goldilocks. So
That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is.
so well, guys, this has been really fun to talk about what's going to be for us, as we work through winter training. And I appreciate you, Katie, joining us and being with us today. Is there any final thoughts you guys want to leave with us?
I, no, I don't know. I guess just I know it's hard to run in the winter sometimes. It's hard to stay motivated. Like Chris said, it's a lot of times it's dark when you get up in the morning and you got to get ready to go to work, and it's dark when you gotta, when you get home. So still try to find that 15, 20 minutes at least and get that run in no matter what, or whatever you can do, even when it's cold and wet and nasty outside. Just think about your spring goals and what you got coming up that you want to get done, and put on as many layers as you need to and get out there and get the job done.
Well, and to add on to that, you can strategically play in your races, right? I was just talking to one of my friends about that earlier today, that if some of her big goals are in the fall, but she's struggling through the winter training, and now that it's dark and it's cold, all the things we talked about today. And I said, well, you can kind of take the winter to just get stronger, concentrate on other types of workouts if you would like to, keep up the running, build a base. I said, actually, my mileage is really cutting back a lot in these next few months over the cold winter months. And that's okay if you set longer goals or you just know yourself. Some people love to train through the winter and they're going to run a big spring goal race, and others of us are, I typically now have realized that I need to keep the races shorter in the spring, maybe up to a half marathon, and then I could go longer in the fall because I do enjoy the warmer weather, the light at the beginning and end of the day to train through. So I guess you could be strategic in your training as well.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think my final thought would be one thing to keep in mind or to try to do is, run with other people if you can in the wintertime. For me, the companionship and the fellowship that we have, running with other folks just makes it that much easier to deal with the cold or deal with the wind. And it adds that little extra bit of motivation and accountability that helps me get out there and keep my training where it needs to be. So it's real easy to get down when you got to run by yourself in the dark or in the rain. But, when you've got your friends out there, it helps, it warms it up a little bit and makes it a better overall experience. So that would be my final thought.
All right. Well, on that note, Chris, I will see you tomorrow at 5 a.m. on the towpath. And if we're lucky, we'll see that guy sleeping there with 12-pack of beer and we can hang out with him.
They might be frosty beers in the morning.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully you guys got some good tips on running in the winter, or we at least entertained you for a little while today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
That's all for today's episode of Tales on the Towpath. Thanks for joining us on another run down memory lane and along the C&O. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to follow, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep your pace steady and your stories flowing.